You are in the ladies' room with Dr. Donica, the only public ladies' room you can enter anytime without ever waiting online. I'm your host, Dr. Donica Moore. We'll be having real conversations with real women about really intimate issues. They may be embarrassing, sad, or funny, but they will always be interesting and informative. You know, like the best conversations you've had in ladies' rooms with your best friends, or total strangers and a physician. Please join us. Hello, and welcome to another very exciting episode of In the Ladies' Room with Dr. Donica. Today, I have a wonderful guest who is a visionary whose pioneering invention launched a major industry and helped level the playing field in business and sports for millions of girls and women, including me. And if you've ever worn a sports bra, you too. Now, as a 28-year-old part-time undergrad, aspiring artist, part-time secretary, and a person with epilepsy, Lisa Lindahl seemed unlikely to be the one to create a sports bra that would reshape the athletic landscape. I was going to make a reshaping joke. I thought better of it. Help launch a fitness revolution for women and become a $19 billion annual industry. Her new book tells the amazing backstory behind the creation of the jog bra. Remember that? An entrepreneurial victory for which she will be inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame in May 2020. But as an inventor, Lisa is not a one-hit wonder. In addition to inventing the sports bra in 1977, and if you don't want to do the math, that was 43 years ago, she also patented a medical garment for breast cancer survivors in 2000. So we're going to talk to her about that as well. Now, the book is called Unleash the Girls, the Untold Story of the Invention of the Sports Bra and How It Changed the World and Me. It takes us back to 1977 when I was a high school senior and a college freshman. And when women, whether they wanted to go to the gym, compete in sports, or jog, had no protection against the bouncing, chafing, sweating breasts. And I remember we used to joke a lot about that. And by joking, I mean bitch and moan. After casually talking to her sister about the need for such a bra, she went to her good friend Polly, who BT Dubs later became an award-winning Muppets costume designer. Her story takes us through the many challenges, ups and downs, pun intended, and successes of launching a business by women for women, which was their original tagline, in an era and an industry dominated by men. She not only shares her been there, done that advice, but she also provides encouragement to anyone looking to turn an idea into a business. Her story is brutally honest and reveals how she navigated, and sometimes didn't navigate so well, the many pitfalls faced by women entrepreneurs in an industry which ironically had 100% female customers, but had ignored the needs of women. Now, what Lisa initially thought might be a small mail-order business took off like wildfire across the country. Her only formal business education was a one-year program at the Catherine Gibbs Secretarial School, and she didn't even drive a car due to having had epilepsy. But in 1991, she joined the board of directors of the Epilepsy Foundation, becoming the first ever board member with epilepsy. Her story is not just the story of an invention used by millions of women and girls, but of how it changed the world, and along the way, changed Lisa, and most of us too. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to the Ladies' Room.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I just, first of all, love the book, love the title. I know we're not supposed to judge a book by the cover, but yes, I did notice that was an Amazonian type figure on the front. So tell us, I love the story that you tell, but of course I don't want to give anything away in the book, but tell us about that conversation you had with your sister that kind of led to the creation of the jog bra.
Oh, well, that was an hysterical conversation. She had just started running herself, and she said, "What?" She called me up and said, "Whatever do you do? What do you do for those bouncing boobs that we have?" And I said, "I don't know what to do. I have no idea what to do. I've been wearing a bra that's one size too small," is actually what I said. Mm-hmm. And I was bemoaning the fact that nothing worked. And she said, "Why isn't there a jock strap for women?" And I went, "Oh my God, that's hysterical." And we were laughing. And she said, "Yeah, same idea, different part of the body." And I said, "Yeah, a jock bra." And we laughed and laughed. And when I hung up the phone, I thought, that is not such a bad idea. And I was in school at the time, so I took out my spiral notebook and wrote down, I said, yeah, what would that actually have to do? And I said, okay, the straps wouldn't fall, because that's what really bothered me, the straps
Yeah.
falling off my shoulder and all of that. And it would breathe, and it wouldn't chafe, and it would I didn't know that you couldn't stop breast movement. So I put, my breast wouldn't move, and all these other
And you
things.
could throw it in the wash.
Oh yeah. And actually I had this idea because I had a running partner at the time that was a guy, and he would be running ahead of me, and he'd strip off his t-shirt and tuck it behind in his shorts. And I was so jealous because I'd get so hot and sweaty. I thought, imagine if it was modest enough that you could actually take off your t-shirt, but I didn't think that was possible at the time. Anyway, so I wrote all that down, but I don't sew. Matter of fact, in 8th grade sewing class, I got a D-.
Oh gosh.
But my friend Polly, who was in that same class, she had excelled and she did very well. And she happened to be renting a room from me and my then husband that summer. And so I went upstairs where I knew she was, and I said, Polly, want to help me sew this bra? And she really didn't want to, but I talked her into it.
And the rest is, as they say, history. Now, speaking of history, I just want to I want to say this, which seems obvious to you and me, but for everybody listening who doesn't remember 1977, women did not really jog much then.
Oh no.
And I remember as a college student, when I was out jogging in bucolic Princeton, New Jersey, men would roll down the windows and hoot and howl because it was just such an odd thing at that time to see women out jogging. And we rarely went jogging alone, even, in, quote unquote, safe communities. Yeah, that was still like a radically different rebellious thing. But at the same time, the other historical phenomenon that was happening in the 1970s was this whole burn your bra movement.
Oh,
so
yes.
there were these two conflicting kinds of things going on in the bra world.
Well, actually, it's true. I mean, if I had been a business head at the time and said, oh, I have this idea, so I'm going to do some market research, I would never have started that business, because that would have shown me that bra sales had been declining like crazy, because women were either burning their bras, either, if not literally, metaphorically. We weren't wearing bras. I was the generation that had been brought up wearing, little panty girdles and stockings and bras, no matter what. And we were throwing them away. We were saying, no, we were going braless. It was, and when I did try and run braless, those hooters and hollerers were very much there. That was one of the reasons why I knew there had to be something. But had I done market research, it would have shown that women had not been buying bras for a long time. And in fact, the existing bra companies were cannibalizing each other. They were just vying for market share of whatever was left, whatever was there. The introduction of the sports bra actually increased bras as a category for the first time in decades.
And was it the first racerback design for a bra?
It was.
Because I remember thinking that was brilliant. And I don't know if you know this, but that led to the racerback design for bathing suits as well. I was a competitive swimmer. And so that racerback design for bathing suits was, a godsend.
Well, that actually is something that I've wondered about, not researched, because I didn't know which came first, because we took the two jockstrap straps and crossed them in the back for our jog bra. And I often wondered if we were first, or whether those, I don't know if they were Speedos or which brand it was that came out with the racerback swimsuits. I didn't know.
Well, I don't know the answer. I'm just going based on my very foggy memory of the time. We can research that. Yeah. I do know in bathing suits, the first one was actually a German company. It was called
Adidas?
Belgrade. It was
Oh,
the
oh,
Belgrade swimsuit. And the only reason I remember that is because I happened to be one of the first Americans to have it.
wow.
So, so that's a whole nother story about bathing suit fashion. So you developed this jog bra. This certainly was a great invention. It stimulated this whole big boom. I understand you had a lot of fits and starts along the way. I love the story also about how Polly came up with the idea of doing what in the prototype.
Oh, well, so we had tried to make a few prototypes along the way, and we were mostly cutting and sewing other traditional bras and trying to put them together. Nothing was working. I was going out to run in these things and nothing was working. And my husband came down the stairs and he had pulled his own jockstrap on over his head and pulled it down over his chest. And Polly and I just thought that was hysterical. And I had to get in on the act, of course. And so I took it off of him and pulled it down over me. And I pulled the pouch over my breast and the waistband was around my rib cage. And I realized, oh my God, this actually feels good. And so we stopped laughing. I said, wait, check this out, Polly. And she came over and she looked and she went, yeah, maybe, okay. And the next day she sent her assistant up to the UVM bookstore, the University of Vermont, to buy 2 jock straps. And she cut 2 jock straps in half and put a pouch and a pouch. And the waistband became a rib band, and the straps that went elsewhere on a guy went around the back. She brought it home to me and I went running in it, and sure enough, it felt great. And we had the engineering problem solved, because I don't know if I've said this, but the bras are so difficult to build because they're not about draping, they're engineered. They have to
Yeah, I
support
thought that was, you did say that in the materials I gotten. And I thought that the comment you made, I don't know if you had said this or Polly had said this, about the only thing more difficult to construct would be a shoe.
Yes, that's
And having just seen Kinky Boots, now I know all about shoe manufacturing, but about the fact that it has to be engineered in 3 dimensions.
yes. And in fact, most up until the sports bra, most bras were engineered by men, and because it's about lift and separate and cantilever and this and that. Um, so, and a shoe is the same way. It's about 3-dimensional design and needs to support many different aspects of the body that are coming together. With the foot, it's the bottom of the foot plus the top of the foot and the toes and the ankle and all these things that need to be enclosed and supported. And the same is true of the bra and the in terms of the breast and the rib cage and the shoulder and all of this. And we weren't engineers. So the re-engineered jockstrap actually was our roadmap. We then just had to make it put way more comfortable fabric and elastic, and figure out how to make it much more comfortable. And Polly also did that. She went to New York City and shopped fabrics and found the correct materials.
Oh, that is fabulous. And then she went on to become a Muppet designer, I understand.
Well, yeah. So we were doing all this the summer of 1977. And at the end of that summer, Polly went back to New York, and Hinda, who had been her assistant and was the one that went and bought the jock straps, and she'd gotten involved as well. And Hinda went off to South Carolina to teach costume design, because she was also a costume designer. But Polly went back to New York and ended up landing a job with Jim Henson and Associates, who, of course, he's the Muppet guy.
Right.
And so I'm fond of saying that Polly is Miss Piggy's costume designer.
Well, and I'm sure that there were a bunch of Miss Piggies who had jog bras as well. I kind of wish you had called it the jock bra. I kind of like that also. So what's interesting too about the evolution of your whole business is that the jock strap was the inspiration for the jog bra, But then I understand you later on went on to make a line of men's undergarments.
Well, yes, we did. We did, because we got, we were always talking to our customers, and that's how we expanded into our line of sports bras. But then the guys started saying to us, "Why can't you do for us what you did for our lady friends? Because the jock strap is not so comfortable. Can't you help us out?" So we did. We came out with what we call a sport brief, or the Max line for men.
Mhm.
And it was a comfortable support garment for men. And we came out with a power liner, which to this day is being worn. It was a supportive cotton lycra, poly cotton lycra, a brief, or actually a short that came down to right above the knee. And we had a whole line of Max for men. Yeah.
That's awesome. Now, of course, as a physician and a women's health advocate, the garment that really impressed me the most was what you did for women with breast cancer. So tell us how that evolved.
Well, thank you so much for bringing that up, because I am really proud about my part in that. Um,
And you should be. You should be proud of all of it. But, that sounds very special. So tell us about that.
well, I had um, left after we sold Jog Bra Sports Bras. I was off back into my studio doing that. And I got a call one day from Dr. Leslie Bell, who was a physical therapist practicing in Williston, Vermont. And her clients were breast cancer survivors who had developed something called lymphedema, which is quite usual. And it's swelling, subdermal swelling. You probably know
Mhm.
all about it, under the skin. And she had to teach her patients how to keep the swelling down. And a usual uh, treatment is compression. So there are compression garments. There are sleeves and gauntlets for these patients to help keep the swelling down once it's moved away. And Leslie was so frustrated because there was nothing for the chest, breast, or back for these patients, because the swelling went into those areas as well. But it was as if she said the medical community thought that the swelling magically ended at the top of the arm. What was
Right.
with that? And she had been jerry-rigging old sports bras, old jog bras, because she could sew, and she had been adding things to old sports bras to try and help her patients. And when she learned that I lived in the same community, she was ecstatic, and she said, "I've got to call her and have her help me make something for these patients." And when she showed me pictures of some of these patients and what they were enduring and the suffering they were going through, because lymphedema, especially truncal lymphedema, can be very painful, very painful, I couldn't say no. And trust me, Danica, I did not want to go back into the bra business at that point. But I couldn't say no. And so I told her I would help her. And it was kind of funny, because whereas with the jog bra, I was taking my idea to Polly and having
Mhm.
her help me turn it into a fabric and elastic reality, here I was in sketching. Leslie was telling me, it's got to do this, and it's got to have a panel here, and the straps have to do this, but we have to have closures here, and it's got to do this and this and this. And I was sketching like crazy and trying to draw what it might do. And I could call some of my contacts from my drag bar years. Okay, who are the fabric manufacturers now, and
Mhm.
where might we cut and sew this and all this? So it was kind of flip flop. And we were able to design and build this. We call it the Compressor Comfort Bra by Belize, is the name we came up with. Her name and my name, Belize. And it's a wonderful garment. It really works, and it has a front. Um, it has a closure in the back that has many different. You can have many different settings of the closure, whether depending upon, and you can have it wider at the top or the bottom. Doesn't have to be all one place. And then you can zip it up the front once you've figured out how it needs to be.
And that's also very sexy too.
That's true. We never thought of it. So, and so we ran the business for about 5 years together. Just, the same as jog bra packaging, getting orders, packaging, shipping, sending out. But then Leslie was also, Leslie is a tremendous healer. She's a very gifted healer, and she's also a great speaker. And so she travels all over the world talking about lymphedema. And so we decided to license the product. So now you can find it through JoviPack.
Okay. So I should actually introduce you to a previous podcast guest we had, Dr. Regina Hampton, who is a breast cancer surgeon in Maryland. And she was very frustrated at the lack of appropriate bras and other undergarments and lingerie for her post-mastectomy patients. And so she actually opened a lingerie boutique of her own, dedicated to women who have had breast surgeries. And it's a full line of lingerie. And she's also still a full-time breast surgeon.
Wow.
So I once said the only physicians who are working 40 hours per week are either retired or on vacation. But she's certainly a dynamo. So I'm so excited to tell everybody one of the things that you must be so proud of, and I'm excited by, is that the jog bra is now in the Smithsonian Institute.
Right. Oh, wow. Yeah, it's in the Smithsonian's American History, Museum of American History, in their archives. Both product is there along its life, different points in its life, and all the business records are now archived there. And it's just an astounding thing. I think when that happened, when the Smithsonian took in the jog bra and called it a revolutionary piece of women's athletic wear, that's when I first said, oh, this wasn't just something I did along the way. This has had an impact on the culture. And it really made me sort of sit up and think about it. And, for me, running had been such an empowering part of my life. It really changed my relationship with my body. And it was never a competitive sport for me. It was really a spiritual practice and changed my life dramatically. And I realized that the existence of the sports bra had also done that for a lot of other girls and women, and changed the culture in ways that I hadn't really sat down to think about. And so I did. I sat down and thought about it. And that was a lot of why 40 years later, I wrote Unleash the Girls, and why it did in fact change the world. And so I am really humbled and proud that the Smithsonian felt that this garment was important enough. It's also in the Metropolitan Museum of Art's costume collection.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And as a revolutionary piece of women's undergarments.
Well, I did not appreciate the importance of women's undergarments in theater and for actors until I became the mother of an actress. And she is a size 0 to 2, but she was the actress who first played the Dolly Parton role in 9 to 5 when it became an amateur, available for amateur productions.
Great.
And they had to make quite an undergarment for her to be able to successfully portray that character as a girl who was, I think she was 16 at the time and very petite, but it was very effective. And I remember Julia Roberts talking about how they had to construct an undergarment for her so that she could play Erin Brockovich.
I bet. Yeah. That's
So
really funny.
that was very impressive. But one of probably, I think, again, historically, what I really want to point out to everyone who's listening, who's not our age, um, is that women really were on the sidelines as far as sports until the
Oh, yeah.
1970s. And yes, there were tremendous Olympians, and we probably could name the handful of women who had been incredible early achievers before Title IX. But Title IX, I think, came to be in 1972, 73.
72. It was
Okay, so and that
1972.
really revolutionized the participation of women in sports. Um, I myself was the first girl in New York City to compete on a boys' team because we didn't have a girls' swim team or a
Ah,
girls' tennis team. And Title IX allowed that. And, that allowed me to go on and do other things. But probably one of the most famous sports bra wearers is one of our phenomenally accomplished Women's World Cup soccer champions, Brandy Chastain, who famously, when she scored the final goal and the first time the women won the World Cup, she took off her jersey and, was there in her sports bra. And so I just want to read for everybody what Brandy Chastain had to say about the sports bra, if you'll indulge me. It's a long quote, but I think it's really worth it. She said, "The sports bra was and is more than a piece of sporting equipment. It has become a symbol and a vehicle for women and girls to propel themselves forward without inhibition towards the future that they are creating. Prior to its inception, and of course, prior to its inception, she was probably just born then. Prior to its inception, the concept of women running, jumping, lifting, competing, basically moving dynamically caused reticence. Now we run and move in every athletic space and then some. To say I don't think about my sports bra anymore is to say I am free to accomplish and go after anything I want. I am empowered to embrace opportunity." And of course, the Women's
exactly.
World Cup soccer team is now embracing the opportunity to try to get pay equity, which is a whole nother feminist challenge. But I want to switch gears on you a little bit and talk to you a little bit about your experience doing all of this and accomplishing all of this while also managing a chronic illness.
Mhm.
And you have been very outspoken about your history with epilepsy. And then, of course, joined the board of directors of the Epilepsy Foundation in 1991. I was shocked to read that you were the first board member who had actually had epilepsy, which is kind of a unique perspective. So tell us about when you were first diagnosed and what that meant for you, and how that kind of influenced your life as well.
Well, I was first diagnosed at age 4 with what's called absence seizures, which is just you lose consciousness for a fraction of a second, and it often goes undiagnosed. Teachers think you're just daydreaming or something, and I was put on medication at that point. What happens is the doctors always say when the child hits puberty, it'll either go away or it'll get worse. In my case, it got worse, and I started having what are called grand mal convulsions or generalized tonic-clonic, which are the kind that you see, the kind of epileptic seizures you see in movies and such, where the person suddenly goes down and starts shaking. And so that's the kind that I have at the moment and have had since about 6th grade, actually, and I remember that because my first grand mal convulsion was in the 6th grade classroom.
Mm.
And I remember thinking after that, how am I going to handle this? Because my mother kept me home from school for a few days. And I remember going back and thinking, I can either walk in there with my chin held high or all embarrassed. And I remember deciding that if anybody's going to make fun of me, it was their problem, not mine.
Good for you.
And I don't know how I was so wise at such a young age, but I was.
And epilepsy was very stigmatized in those days.
It still is, actually. It still is. When I married my first husband in Princeton, as a matter of fact,
Oh,
yeah, in 1970, a woman came up to him and patted him on the shoulder and said, "You're so good to marry her with her problem and all."
Ugh.
So, and growing up, I got a real double message. On the one hand was, oh, the poor little epileptic, we have to watch out for her. And did you take your pills? Did you take your pills? On the one hand. And on the other hand, it was, you're the brightest and the best and can do anything you put your mind to, but don't. So, and also there were no expectations of me. It was, my mother made me go to Catherine Gibbs to learn to type and take shorthand because in case no one wanted to marry me and I would have to earn my own living, God forbid, in that day and time. Because
that was a thing then.
Oh yeah, I mean, let's remember, as Gloria Steinem, I just heard her say recently, let's remember those times growing up in the 60s, women couldn't even get their own credit. They didn't have their own checkbooks. They couldn't get their own credit cards. Let's remember that. So
I was just explaining to my kids that, first of all, birth control pills didn't even become on the market until 1962 and a half, 62, 63. And for a married woman to get birth control pills in those days, she had to have the express written permission and signed permission of her husband, which I like to say is why my mother had 6 children.
Yeah, really. I mean, young women these days don't realize how far we have come, and there is still a long way to go. But really, so add to that having a chronic disorder, a chronic illness, and one that is stigmatized, and also one, in my case, that in a large part of the time was invisible. It's not like you're in a wheelchair or have a constant tremor, or
it's 0 or 100. It's either completely invisible or it's completely in front of everybody, and you have no control over that. There are many stigmatized illnesses you can hide, or there's many stigmatized illnesses that you don't have any outward signs unless somebody's really knowledgeable or really paying attention. If you wanted to hide the fact that you had type 1 diabetes, you probably could. Or if you wanted to hide the fact that you had schizophrenia, once there were medications, you probably could. But if you have a grand mal seizure in public, you can't hide that.
And I've had a few in public. Actually, in Unleash the Girls, one of the things I write about is the fact that epilepsy was one of my, what I call a shadow teacher. Mm-hmm. I learned a great deal by dealing with my epilepsy, both privately and publicly. And one of the things I know is that people are good. Mm-hmm. I have had convulsions in airports, in taxi cabs, in foreign places, and no one has ever stolen anything, assaulted me. I've always been helped. Strangers have put their coats under my head, I had a taxi cab driver take me from the airport in New York City to Bellevue Hospital and not even take the taxi cab fare out of my wallet. Now, I wish I could remember his name, just so.
Did you ever have a seizure in a ladies' room?
I've been taken to the ladies' room after a seizure. I've never had one in a ladies' room.
The reason I ask is in our very first episode, I described a number of the memorable experiences I had in ladies' rooms, which kind of contributed to my calling this podcast In the Ladies' Room, but kind of also contributed to the concept of the podcast. And one of those experiences was I was actually on a date in my 4th year of medical school with a guy who was absolutely charming and appealing to me. But I had been on call, and we went to this very nice restaurant. He was not a medical student, so he had a real job and could take me to a really nice place. And I fell asleep face plant in the soup.
Oh no.
So I was mortified and went into the ladies' room to clean up, whereupon I found a woman on the floor having a grand mal seizure. And that kind of snapped me back into doctor mode. But let's just do a public service announcement for what somebody should do if they walk into a situation where they see somebody having a seizure on the floor. And so what advice do you give people?
I say make sure they're not hurting themselves by hitting their head against something. Cushion the head, move the head to the side so that any drool or something goes out of their mouth, not down their throat. Just don't try and restrict them or hold them down. That's not helpful. Just make sure they're not causing any harm by scraping a hand or something. Look at your watch if you have one, or your phone. There's nothing that you can really do except I suggest very calmly and quietly, be calm, be quiet, and say, it's all right, I'm here. It's all right, I'm here, you're fine, it's all right. If the seizure goes longer than 5 minutes, that's the time to call 911. That's my advice. You're the doctor. What do you say?
Well, before I give my advice, tell me also what works for you from your perspective for people to do when you start coming to.
Well, I have, because I'm alone a lot in my studio and such, I have always trained myself to listen. So it's important to me, that voice. I can follow a voice back to consciousness. So, and that's also, it's important for me not to have the panicked voices and actions around me. I'm already a little freaked out, so having that calming voice is important. Having something under my head is important. For when you're in a public place, people always want to call 911. Mm-hmm. But unless someone's bleeding, well, this is my preference, please don't call 911. There's really nothing they can do if what you're having, if you have epilepsy and it's that sort of seizure, there's nothing they can do.
So that's the challenge for even a physician as a bystander. Do you wear a medic alert bracelet?
Yes.
Okay. So what I would say as a doctor is if somebody's wearing a medic alert bracelet that says that they have epilepsy, you don't need to call 911 for the first
Good point.
However, if they are not wearing a medical alert bracelet, you do have to call 911. Or what you could do first is see, like say it happens in the ladies' room of a restaurant, chances are that person's not in the restaurant alone. So find out who came with them and find out if they have a history of epilepsy, because you don't know if this is the first time this person is having a seizure. And you don't know, even if you're a doctor who happens to come in there, you don't know why they're having a seizure. There are many things that cause seizures other than epilepsy.
Yes.
Such as a drug overdose or a brain tumor or, a whole list of other things. So you can't assume that this is just something that happens to this person unless they have that medical alert bracelet that says what their history is. And I know a lot of people don't like to wear medical alert bracelets, but this is a really good reason, especially now when we're concerned about staying out of the emergency room for anything that's not really a serious medical emergency that requires care. Because we are now challenging our resources with our emergency rooms. So that's where I would make the call. In the case where I was a medical student and ran into this woman in the ladies' room, she was with family and they did say she has epilepsy. This happens. She's fine. You made a great point about looking at your watch. So the reason to look at your watch and see how long the seizure is going is not just to see if it reaches that 5-minute threshold for requiring medical care, but also because if it is the first time, especially if it's the first time somebody's having a seizure, and if first responders are called, you want to be a reporter. You want to be able to say to the first responder, I walked in, this is what I saw, and this is how long it lasted. But other information that's really helpful for doctors is, was it one side of the body or both sides of the body? Was it just the upper body or just the lower body? did they lose urine while they were having their seizure? You know, all of these things give more information. Was there vomiting? Was there complete loss of consciousness or not complete loss of consciousness? So all of these things will help the medical team try to piece together what happened.
Absolutely. Yep.
So speaking of the ladies' room, I told you about this situation. I always ask all my guests, what was the most unique, interesting, different, or memorable experience you ever had in a ladies' room?
Oh my, I keep journals.
Well, that's good.
It's one of the ways that I was able to write Unleash the Girls and remember a lot of what happened when. And in one of my journals, when I was researching the book, I was in this incredible place. I was somewhere in China and visiting our factory there. And I went on and on and on about this ladies' room. So I'm describing
in a good way or a not so good way?
In a good way. In
okay.
a good way. Actually, though, now that you say it, anyway, and I'm sitting here reading this, going, there I am in China, and what I am writing about is this ladies' room, what the faucets looked like, what the sink looked like, and then I realized it's a trend because I had found elsewhere in these journals, I had described another ladies' room from 1978 in San Francisco in some hotel. And when I was in Sri Lanka, I had described in another, it wasn't a ladies' room, but it was a pit in the floor and it was the only place to go.
We've had a lot of guests who've talked about those kinds of ladies' room stories.
So I guess I pay attention to the decor of the ladies' room.
Well, it's very important and it influences our state of mind, our state of being. And especially when you're on vacation or you're traveling in another country, it strikes you. I was recently in Mexico City for the first time, and I had heard a lot of negative things about Mexico City and very pejorative things. And that was not my experience at all. In fact, I went to this one place where the ladies' room was so spectacular that I not only wrote about it, but I took photographs. And they actually, it was a ladies' room in a public museum for which there was no admission fee in this museum. And yet it was gorgeous. And there were huge vases of large, colorful, fresh flowers, not fake flowers. And there was a long bank of sinks where you didn't have to touch anything to turn the water on or off. And this was before coronavirus. And the other thing that struck me is there was no line waiting to use the ladies' room because there were at least 20 stalls.
Wow.
So I said, this ladies' room was clearly designed by a woman.
Yep, definitely designed by a woman.
Actually, the last time I was at the theater, there was such a long line at the men's room that it actually competed with the line at the ladies' room. I couldn't believe it.
Finally.
Anyway, I could talk to you all day, but we are running out of time. But I don't want to let you go without you telling people, where can they get your book? And where can they find more about you? I'm assuming you have a website.
I do. They can find my book at any online retailer. They all have it, as well as please ask your local bookseller. They can order it from the people they usually order their books from, if they don't already have it. And you can also order it off of my website, which is just my name, www.lisalindahl.com. Please go, and you'll learn other things about me on there.
And that's right. This is not your only book. Quickly tell us. Give us the 1 minute elevator story about your other book. And I forgot the name, so I apologize. I know it was a beauty book.
It's called Beauty as Action, how the way of true beauty and how it can change our world. And it is not about cosmetics. It's about cosmology. It is a philosophy book, and it's the practices, how you can practice bringing more beauty into your world and your actions. And beauty is just about harmony. And that's what it's about.
And that's certainly a message that we need now more than ever.
Please, yes, it's what really matters. What really matters.
Well, that's a great note to end on. Thank you so much, not only for being here and sharing your wisdom and insights and experiences with us, but also for your tremendous contributions to women's health and fitness, which that really is, and something for the guys in between.
Well, thank you, Danica. I really, really appreciate it, and I've enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Take care.
That's all we have time for today. But let's keep the conversation going on Twitter or Facebook at Dr. Donica. And please join us next week for another episode of In the Ladies' Room with Dr. Donica. Real conversations with real women about really intimate topics.